Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video. Today, I want to talk about a topic that I enjoy thinking about from time to time, and that is what is a bad programmer? What are the traits of a bad programmer? I'm going to try to keep this relatively short, and I might have to follow it up with another video. But basically, I would say that some of the traits of a not so great programmer would be they tend to write code that is excessively complex, difficult to understand, even for themselves, even for them, in many cases. So they'll sit down and write this code, and maybe while they're writing it actively, they mostly know what they're doing, but when they come back to it a week or a month or several months later, it's difficult for them to get back into the mindset that they had while they were writing the code, because it's just overly complicated. And what's worse is other people needing to get into that code who look at it and just pull out their hair and they're like, I don't know what this is doing and I don't understand why they did it in this way. Um, not a good thing. Now, I'm saying this largely from the perspective of being a business programmer or corporate programmer. Oftentimes you're working with other developers in the same code base or in the same code together, and you may write some functionality in this code, and then others may have to come in and help maintain it because you've moved on to something else or whatever the reasons may be. And so when you're writing that code, you need to be thinking about, will other people be able to understand what's going on here? I've also seen what I would consider to be a bit of a selfish almost kind of, or a conceited kind of a mindset, where some developers who write this, what I consider to be this bad code because it's overly complex, they may think that their overly complex code is some sign of intelligence. Therefore, they should not need to dumb it down for other people, which is, I think, kind of, maybe, I don't know, ironic might be the word, or at least paradoxical, because in fact, I think that writing overly complex code for moderate to non-trivial uh, problems is kind of like the default. Like, if you do no thinking whatsoever and no planning up front, and you have to implement code for some non-trivial thing, the default, I think, is going to be overly complex code, right? Because you're just kind of stream of consciousness, not thinking it through. You're going to try things. Some of those thoughts aren't going to work. You're probably kind of in the zone, so you're not going to want to like clean up after yourself much, if at all. And you'll likely leave a lot of the dead end ideas there. And some of them may be dead ends and you don't even realize they're dead ends. Like, you're thinking this is going to be actively called code, only to realize after some analysis, which likely won't ever occur, that some of these code branches and things that you've got in here just are never going to be used. Um, so anyway, yeah, overly complex. Along with overly complex code, there's also this thing of just like, your files are too long. I'm using the word file here just generically. What I could be talking about, depending on the language, like if it's Java, then I'm probably talking more about classes, class files. But any programming structure, whether it's functions, methods, classes, files, whatever, um, if you have trouble, significant trouble, or others may be likely to have trouble keeping in your head what this particular file does, like really does, because it's thousands of lines long, and what it's doing up at the top, by the time you get to the bottom, like, you just can't keep it all straight. That's a bad sign. That's good chance that might be bad code. Now, I'm not saying I haven't ever written code like that. I certainly have, and there are reasons for that, and they're almost never good reasons, but I certainly have. But that might be something you want to try to avoid. You know, really, I think I can say that those two traits right there probably pretty well sum up sum up a lot of the worst code. Let me flip it around though and give a couple of examples of what I consider to be good code or clean code. Typically, that will be code that is somewhat well thought out. I'm not saying you need to take days and days to think it through before you write your first line of code. That wouldn't be good either. You do need to, jump in and write something, but taking a few moments at least to think through structurally, like what am I trying to accomplish here, and have I ever seen patterns for that implement the kinds of problems that I'm trying to solve here. Like, have I ever seen any patterns that were clear and concise? Should I perhaps consider drawing on some of those patterns? If I haven't seen any patterns for that, maybe I should take 30 to 60 minutes possibly to go Google around and look for code that claims to solve some of the problems that I'm needing to solve, so I can get some good ideas. Hopefully they'd be good ideas, right? Especially in like some popular open source projects or something of that sort. Might not hurt, couldn't hurt, right? Um, the best code that I've ever seen tends to be code that is solving non-trivial problems in a way that looks very trivial. Like, it's solving non-trivial problems, but it looks so obvious and so simple, right? Like, no one's going to be impressed by that code when they see it. They will think, oh yeah, this looks like the way that should have been written. And what's interesting about that is the developer who writes code in that way likely won't get many kudos for it from a lot of people, because it will look obvious. It will look like, yeah, there's nothing special here at all. But if you were to look at a competing implementation by someone who put little to no thought behind it, that's overly complex, right? Um, it, Only then will you maybe be able to fully appreciate how difficult it actually is to solve non-trivial problems with simple code, right? That's just, very difficult to do in many cases, but it is something that we should strive for. Why should we strive for that? Real quick, I'll just say that basically the more complex your code is early on in the project, it's only going to get worse from there, right? So you're trying to give yourself some headroom. You want the early days of your coding, and I mean like on a project, to ideally be as simple as you reasonably can make it, because most projects tend to just get more and more complex over time if they live long enough to be allowed to do that, at least. And so the simpler you can keep it in the early days, the better. So we want to keep structures ideally small. We want to name variables meaningfully. We want to name everything meaningfully. In fact, we want to give variable names meaningful names. We want to name functions in meaningful ways that are fairly clear and hopefully obvious to yourself and to others who might be looking at that code. That goes a long way towards making good code and being a good developer. So there are more things that I definitely could say about bad programmers and bad code, and I will almost certainly follow up in some more videos. But these are just a few thoughts that I had floating around in my head today, and I just wanted to quickly talk about them. So if you like this video, please do be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.